I'll turn it over to Mr. Zimper. Please give our presenters and Mr. Zimper your undivided attention.
Welcome back. We have electricity, we have water, all is well. This is going to be a different kind of assembly than what we've had so far this year. The two that we've had a little earlier this year were all about us, and this assembly isn't so much about us. This assembly is more about learning about things that have happened in the past and kind of what our responsibility is with that knowledge. Anybody who's been in 8th grade already and been through it understands the story of Anne Frank. We do the stage play in my class, and you study World War II, and gotta get out of the light. Yeah. So you're gonna have the background necessary to really understand what our presenters came to talk to you about today. For those of you who are in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, the 8th graders who are in my class right now, when you come back after your standardized test, we'll be doing the stage play. For the 7th and 6th graders, you'll get it in another year or two. So let me give you a little background about Anne Frank, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the sapling, and then I'm going to introduce our presenters today. During World War II, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party attempted to exterminate every living Jew in Europe. And they did it through something called the Holocaust. And they succeeded with 6.5 million people. Killed them. Anne Frank and her family were living in Holland when this took place, and with the help of some Dutch citizens, they went into hiding for 2 years and 2 months and successfully evaded the Nazis. Eventually their hiding place was found, they were captured, they were sent to concentration camps, and 7 out of the 8 people who were in hiding died either of disease in the camps, or starvation, or the gas chambers. The lone survivor was Anne's father, Otto Frank, and when he came back, he discovered Anne's diary that she had kept while she was in hiding. He edited it, he got it published, and it is now one of the most significant documents to come out of the 20th century. A 13 and 14-year-old girl changed the world with her diary, though she's not alive now to see what it did. Our presenters today are going to talk to you a little bit about what it was like to be in Europe during that time, because Mrs. Jacobs, Laura Jacobs, was part of a program called Kindertransport. And what Kindertransport was a way for Jewish children to be sent to England, where they would live with English families and avoid capture by the Nazi Party. A little bit about why we're doing this today and what's going to follow. Back in about 2009, a guy named Phil Donovan, who most of you know from art class, gave me an article from the New York Times. In this article, the Times was talking about the fact that there is this horse chestnut tree that grew outside of where Anne Frank and her family hid. Anne Frank would look at this tree out the window. Remember, she was stuck inside, did not go outside for 2 years and 2 months. And this was kind of one of her connections with the outside world. This tree would show her when the seasons were changing, and it became kind of symbolic of her, for her, of the world that she was hiding from. Anyway, the Dutch government went to great lengths to keep this tree alive, but as all living things do, the tree was kind of on life support and about to die. And so this article from the New York Times was not only talking about the death of this tree, it was talking about the fact that the Anne Frank Center USA, which is in New York City, was going to have 11 saplings from this tree that they were going to distribute to various sites in the United States. The White House was getting one. The Children's Museum in Indianapolis was getting one. The 9/11 Memorial Site was going to get one. And the rest of them were kind of up for grabs, so to speak. You could write an application for one and potentially be awarded one. So Southern Cayuga did just that. We wrote a grant application, submitted it, and along with a number of other sites throughout the country, we were awarded one of these saplings. It sat in isolation, I'm sorry, there's another word for it, quarantine. It sat in quarantine for a couple of years because you can't bring growing things into the country from outside the country, until you're sure they don't have any invasive species of bugs in them or any other diseases that are going to kill off other trees. So this thing has been in a greenhouse down in New York City for a couple of years. Finally, it has been released. It is coming. This year we're going to be planting it, and on June 12th there will be some festivities and ceremonies to mark the arrival of this tree. More than just the tree coming, its presence and our being awarded it is a commitment on our part as a school to become carriers of the message of tolerance, of understanding, and of making the world a better place than what Anne Frank experienced. And so today is kind of the launching of those ceremonies and those events. Okay, so now let me introduce and turn the microphone over to our two guests. This is Laura Jacobs. Laura Jacobs lives in Hamilton, Ontario now, and she is here today with her daughter Gail Halpern to teach us about something called the Kindertransport program. Gail is actually going to read her mother's story to you, and there will be time at the end of it, hopefully, if I don't talk too much longer, for a few questions and answers, okay? So I'm going to repeat what Mr. Carnicelli asked you, and that is that you be attentive and respectful during the presentation, all right? So without anything more, I will turn it over to you, Gail.
Thank you, Mr. Zimfer, the whole school, the superintendent, Patrick Jensen, principal. Tell me his name. Okay, and all of you students. Thank you for being here and listening to us. I'm speaking in the first person on behalf of my mother. My mother is almost 89 years old. She has her birthday on Wednesday. She's been doing this for years, but I think it's about time I took over a little bit, so I'll be doing the talking. I am delighted to be here at Southern Cayuga High School, Southern Cayuga High School, speaking to you on this day of dedication for the Anne Frank tree sapling. Congratulations to you and your teachers for receiving this honor. By applying for and planting the tree, your actions fill me with great hope. Your school is highlighting how important it is to continue the fight against hatred and intolerance in this world, and to recognize the need to look beyond our differences and find the good in all people. I'm sure that most of you have heard of Anne Frank and may have studied her diary. I, like Anne Frank, was born and grew up in Frankfurt, Germany. I have this map up here that shows you a little bit of the geography of Europe. And Frankfurt is A at the bottom, in the middle of Germany. The other, B and C, we're going to talk about as we get through the story. Anne lived there until she was 4 years old. Her family was very similar to mine. Her father, Otto Frank, owned a small business, and so did my father. Anne lived in a mixed neighborhood where Jews were a minority, as did I. Anne was born in 1929, and I was born 5 years earlier in 1924. Both of our families were liberal Jews, meaning that we were practicing Judaism, but were not extremely strict. Our families felt and were treated as if we were part of German society. Now, the 1920s were a very difficult time to be born from an economic point of view. How many of you have heard of the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression?